This video will examine how libraries organize information and some of the strengths and weaknesses of their classification systems. Understanding how information is structured can help us find the information we're looking for more effectively. Different types of sources, such as books, social media posts, or research articles, have their own unique structures. There is also structure in how people connect different pieces of information to each other. The ways pieces of information are organized, named, and connected to each other to facilitate findability and usability is called information architecture. Information architects decide what categories the various pieces of information fit into and what those categories should be called in order to make it easier for the searcher to find particular pieces of information. Some organizational structures are informal and may include user-generated categories like social media hashtags. Others are more formal and use a controlled vocabulary that consistently uses the same terms to describe the same category of information, making it easier to find. Library of Congress subject headings are an example of a controlled vocabulary that is used to describe what books are about. Discovering the subject headings that relate to your topic can make it easier to find relevant sources in a library catalog. Most libraries in the United States and some other countries use Library of Congress subject headings to categorize and organize information. The two major library classification schemes in the US, the Dewey Decimal System and the Library of Congress Classification System, are based on Library of Congress subject headings. These classification systems determine where books are placed on library shelves. They are designed to ensure that books on the same subject will be located near each other in the library, but their categories reflect a particular point of view. Organizational structures are created by people who reflect the biases of their time and place. The terms used and the ways they relate to each other also change over time, which can complicate the process of accessing information. You might have noticed that Library of Congress classification identifies two sections for history of the Americas, while books about the history of every place else are put in one world history section. Similarly, consider the Dewey Decimal System's 970s section, History of North America. What do you notice about the topics that are presented? What implications do you think these categories might have for libraries? Also consider the Library of Congress subject heading, Physicians. Which of these terms do you think are actual Library of Congress subject headings? African American physicians, white physicians, physicians male, and physicians female. Why would there be subject terms for African American physicians and physicians female, but not for white physicians or physicians male? These categories reflect a cultural and historical assumption that the term physicians refers to white men, and that only physicians who differ from that norm need to be identified separately. If you are using a library catalog to search for information about female doctors, the physician's female term may be a useful way of narrowing your search results. But if you are browsing the shelves for books about doctors, the fact that books about female doctors are in a different location than books about doctors in general may reinforce the stereotype that doctors tend to be white men. And where should a book about a Black female doctor go on the shelf? In the African American physicians section or in the physicians female section? Sometimes bias in subject headings gets corrected. In 2014, students from the Dartmouth College Coalition for Immigration Reform, Equality, and Dreamers petitioned the Library of Congress to replace the term illegal aliens, a dehumanizing slur, with the term undocumented immigrants. After reviewing the students' request, in 2016, the Library of Congress rejected the proposed term undocumented immigrants, but replaced the term illegal aliens with the terms non-citizens and unauthorized immigration. These improvements address bias and misrepresentation in the old subject heading, but they may also complicate the search process for people who are researching immigration. This is because newer sources will be classified with the new subject headings, while older sources may still use the outdated term. Another strategy for addressing the bias and misrepresentation inherent in the Dewey and Library of Congress classification systems is to use completely different systems. For example, many Indigenous libraries have adopted Indigenous knowledge organization systems, such as the Brian Deer classification system, developed by Kahnawake librarian Brian Deer. Understanding how information is organized in the libraries you use and the strengths and weaknesses of those organizational systems can help you search more strategically, think more critically about the types of results you are and are not finding, and improve your searches as you go along.